But friends, we've been in this series called Your Holiday Survival Guide. This series that we started just last Sunday as we have kind of tiptoed our way now into the holiday season. Maybe your home already has the decorations, it already has all those things on it. In our home, we usually wait till after Thanksgiving, and so if you're normal like us, then great, but that's all right. Well, for some, we throw the lights on, we get excited this time of the year, but it's this time where we plan our holiday family gatherings, we plan who's cooking what, we plan where we're gathering, all of this stuff, and so we began to lean into this series that talks a lot about relationships, a lot about family, a lot about us connecting together and how we interact as people. And so like last Sunday we leaned into what it looks like to have a heart that is full of love and a real kind of love. Not a love that is flaky, not a love that loves people who just care for us, but a love that is sacrificial, a love that is selfless, that's not trying to build itself up, a love that seeks no repayment. And so I encourage you, if you missed our conversation last Sunday, I encourage you, lean into the church app. There's a way that you can listen to the last week's sermon, all that stuff. But friends, we get to continue in our series, and I want to share this story. When I was a kid, I grew up in the Midwest, and my grandparents on my mother's side, they lived kind of out in the country. They lived in this neighborhood that was kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and it butted up right to this old apple orchard. And in the area that I grew up in, apple orchards were everywhere. They were everywhere. And so as this time would come, we would always go apple picking. We'd go and get apples and make apple cider. That was a normal part of where I grew up as a kid. And I loved going to my grandparents' house because I loved to go to their house and go exploring in this old apple orchard. It was abandoned or forgotten or just ignored. And so it was all overgrown, but these trees everywhere with all this fruit that would come every spring, and then it would drop to the ground. And I remember we came one time, and I was so excited. I had this weird idea of wanting to get some apples and wanting to eat some of them and maybe make some applesauce or something like that out of them. And my grandparents were like, no, don't do that. Don't worry about it. We'll go to the store. I'm like, no, I want to go do this, right? And so I'd go outside, and I had this like bin plastic thing with me, and I'd go around, and I was a little small at the time, so I couldn't quite get the apples that were still up in the tree. And if you know this, in apple picking, you go and get them from the tree. But as a kid, I couldn't reach them all the way up there, so I would just go and find the ones that were already on the ground because they were easy to get to. And so I'd go around, and I'd look at them, and I would pick them up, and there'd be a few that were mushy, but I'd find a couple that looked good. They looked good, like as if you had picked them out of Walmart. It looked nice on the outside. I found a couple, threw them in my basket, and sure enough, brought them back to my grandparents' house, and I began to kind of slice them open. And it was in the moment where I began to take a knife and cut them in half that I would crack them open and to find that sure enough, even though it looked delicious on the outside, they were quite rotten and disgusting on the inside. And so you could imagine my disappointment as a kid of doing all this work and marching all over this place and only finding a bunch of apples that were no good. And see, it's interesting that I didn't notice that something was wrong until I cut it open, until I applied a bit of pressure that will allow the inside to really be exposed. And you see, this is reality in life that we live in, where pressure tends to reveal what's really inside of us. We find ourselves in moments when pressure really reveals what is inside of us. And you see, we walk through life, and even my heart breaks for so many who on the outside are working so hard to kind of keep up this picture-perfect life, but truly on the inside, when pressure comes, when heartache comes, when hardship comes, it begins to reveal this new side of who we are. And maybe there are moments where we feel pressured, and so we burst in anger, like a ticking time bomb, or we get these kind of moments where life seems to be pressing in on us, and so we give ourselves a relationship that's not good, or we go down a path or a journey that's not good, or we get into this kind of bitter driven kind of mindset, this attitude inside of us, but we get to this place where all of a sudden now we're different and we don't like it. It shows people around us a different side of us that frankly maybe we try to keep hidden. And you see, we go through life and we just kind of check it off as normal. That's just always who we are. That's just always what's going to be what's happening inside of us. And that's just normal for people. It's used to people exploding. It's used to people exploding and degrading each other. It's normal. It's normal in our family around Thanksgiving. It's normal in this setting. It's normal in that. But you see, as people who are walking with God, there's this work inside of us that He's looking to do that we cannot miss. And you see, we read this scripture last week where Jesus was teaching about the content of our hearts. And there's another moment similar in Luke chapter 6 in verse 43 where Jesus, he says this. It's another moment where all these people are leaning in and they're listening to Him. And He says this. He says, a good tree can't produce bad fruit, and a bad tree can't produce good fruit. A tree is identified by its fruit. Figs are never gathered from thorn bushes, and grapes are not picked from bramble bushes. A good person produces good things from the treasury of a good heart, and an evil person produces evil things from the treasury of an evil heart. What you say flows from what is in your heart. As a tree of a certain kind produces a certain kind of fruit, so is it that we should expect a piece of fruit that appears good on the outside to also be good within. And you see, there's this journey in life where we realize that something is not right. And it's now, again, like I've already said, we're coming to the time of the year where pressure is already beginning to apply. Pressure to get presents, to get the perfect presents for our loved ones. I'm a terrible gift giver, y'all. Listen, pray for your pastor's wife, because I'm a terrible gift giver, and the anxiousness I feel of like, I'm going to mess this up again. And I tell you right now, in the 10 years that we've been married, Erin could tell you all the stories of like terrible gift, but she does such a great job. She opens it, she's like, Andre, this is great, this is so wonderful. And then I never see it again, right? And so, but oh my goodness, I'm a terrible gift giver. But so we feel the anxiousness of making sure that our kids have a good Christmas. We feel the anxiousness of cooking good food, and we feel the pressure of trying to now be the one in charge of the family, where now maybe mom or someone has passed away, and so now we're kind of the leader of the family tree. So we feel the pressure now of all of this. We feel the pressure of jobs and work and planning parties and going to parties and bringing gifts and just all of that stuff. And it's a time of the year where pressure gets to us, and it begins to reveal a part of us that we don't like. And friends, I want us to lean into this journey of allowing God to do this work inside of us, not one that's so focused on the exterior of behavior and good deeds, but one that is on the inside of our soul, because who we are on the outside flows from who we are on the inside, and people really see it when pressure gets applied. And you see, I want us to lean into this reality of what Jesus is trying to warn us with. That there's this part that is within us that is quite rebellious. That we have this attitude of our soul, and we need to let God treat it. It's this part of us that leans into selfishness. It's this part of us that leans into self-preservation. It's a side that leads into ego, or sides that lead into insecurity, whatever it is. But there's this inside of us that God has got to work in. And you see, what I want us to lean into and recognize this morning together as a family is that the solution to our attitude is allowing God to saturate our soul with humility. I want us to see that. As we spoke about being filled with God's love last week, I want us to lean into how He so badly wants to see our souls filled with humility. The solution to our attitude is having a soul that is saturated with humility. And you see, we know that because as Jesus shares this story in Luke chapter 6, right after it, this moment happens. You see, just as this kind of teaching moment ends and all these people had gathered around to listen and hear him, now all of a sudden they're kind of dispersing and going back home. And now he and his disciples are getting all back together. Like, all right, we're going to head on this journey over to this new city, this new village over here on the other side of the land. And they begin heading that direction. And as they get near, someone comes to get their help. In Luke chapter 7, says this: when Jesus had finished saying all this to the people, he returned to Capernaum. At that time, the highly valued slave of a Roman officer was sick and near death. And when the officer heard about Jesus, he sent some respected Jewish elders to ask him to come and heal his slave. So they earnestly begged Jesus to help the man. If anyone deserves your help, he does, they said. Do you notice what they just said? If anyone deserves your help, this man does. They said, for he loves the Jewish people and even built a synagogue for us. Now I'll pause there for a moment because I do not want us to miss as Jesus is coming into this new town, these people come and they begin to be sent on behalf of this man of great wealth, of great affluence, this man who had great power and authority in their region, his highest valued servant, a great endearing friend, someone he cared about. This is someone who probably for years has worked with him. This man has probably at some point early in his life owed him and had a debt that he could not pay off. And so instead of paying it off, he worked it off. And so this man comes to a point where now this man is not just concerned from the loss of him being repaid, but now he's concerned for this man, someone he cared about. And he has this moment where he sends this word to some people of religious authority. He says, go and talk to Jesus on my behalf, and please ask him to come and consider helping and taking care of this man. And they even said this guy was a guy who he even built a synagogue for us to worship in our community. What's so fascinating is today, if we jumped on our phone and we Googled a synagogue in Capernaum, we'd see pictures of maybe some modern day ones, but there's actually these old ruins, these old stone structures of an old synagogue that was built thousands of years ago. And so this man didn't just build a shack somewhere for them to go and do their thing. He poured so much of his resource, so much of his heart to building something that would last and still for probably 2,000 years has. Wow. This man cared for people. But you see, he at the same time was someone who many in that day would think as an enemy. Think as someone that would be hated. Because he was a man who was a Roman centurion, so he had all these armies and soldiers and squadrons underneath him. He was a man of great authority. People would look at him and think he was really the enemy. But these Jewish leaders, they come in this moment, they say, if anybody deserves help, please help this guy. And already in this moment, as this man is terrified, I'm going to say this a lot this morning, as this man is terrified for his friend's life, he goes to Jesus. This man of great accessibility to anything he would want goes to Jesus. And you see, Jesus and his disciples, they begin to follow. They say, okay, we'll come, we'll help take care of him. And Jesus agrees to go. And as they approach this man's house, something actually begins to happen. It says in verse 6, so Jesus went with them. But just before they arrived at the house, the officer sent some friends to say, Lord, don't trouble yourself by coming to my home, for I am not worthy of such an honor. I am not even worthy to come and meet you. Just say the word from where you are, and my servant will be healed. I know this because I am under the authority of my superior officers, and I have authority over my soldiers. I only need to say go, and they go, or come, and they come. If I say to my slaves, do this, and they do it. And when Jesus heard this, he was amazed. Turning to the crowd that was following him, he said, I tell you, I haven't seen faith like this in all of Israel. And when the officer's friends returned to his house, they found the slave completely healed. And now in this moment, this man sends some of his closest friends. He's now not reaching out to people who would be quick to kind of, who would from a distance adore him, but now he sends people who are closest to him to go speak on his behalf and say, Jesus, no, please, you don't have to come in. And he says in this moment, please, I'm not even worthy to come meet you. I'm not even worthy to come be near you. And this is a powerful moment because you'd expect this man to be entitled towards Jesus, but he doesn't. And this is so important for us to understand in this story. This man of great wealth, this man who in everybody's book was a really great guy, and this man who had certainly had great favor with the people, who had done great, nice, generous things in the community, this man of great status among everybody, you'd expect this man to feel entitled towards Jesus, but he doesn't. And you see, what I want us to lean into and understand in this moment is that Jesus at the very end says, wow, what great faith this man has, because he sees right through all of it and sees the interior of his soul, and he sees this man who could have been entitled. He could have had this moment of demanding that Jesus come and do this for him because he deserves it, that he's been good enough, that he's done nice things for people. But instead, with great humility, he sends his closest friends and he says, I'm not even worthy to come meet you. We have to understand that when our souls are saturated with humility, there is no room for an attitude of entitlement inside of us. And now understand, in our culture today, in our language today, we bring out this word that maybe has a sour taste in our mouth as we say entitled, and usually it's from one generation and saying it to another, but understand that it is this posture of our heart that exists in all people. In all people. It's this place where when we feel pressure beginning to press in on us, we default into declaring what we believe we deserve. And so we position now ourselves into a place of where we demand. And now we should and hopefully receive respect and care from people. But we all know that some people be peopling. Some people just do their thing. And some people are hurt, and hurt people. And so there's this posture now where Jesus invites us to be like this man and kind of shift to a place of humility where now we aren't looking to get what we think we deserve from people. Understand, go ahead and back up for me. We're not quite there yet, all right? Understand that. Entitlement, we are these people who feel like we deserve things. And we live even in a world now where we even hope to receive things. We hope that our children would love and respect us. We would hope that our siblings or our parents would love and respect us. We would hope for these things. But understand that in our world today, there is but one person who has vowed themselves, and we vowed ourselves back to them, to love each other till death do us part. And it's in our marital relationship only where we're in this place where it's a two-way street where we love selflessly and we are receiving selfless love back. But nowhere else in our life have we made these vows with people and they've made it back with us. And now we even maybe have had promises made to us. But we even know that those get broken too, don't they? Understand that it's okay to hope, but understand that we have first got to step into a place where we're not demanding. We can hope. But sometimes we step into a place in the same family member who is always expressing favoritism in the family. And you are hoping that it wouldn't happen this year, but it happens again, and it is heartbreaking. Or we hope that we gather as a family, and we hope that maybe dad or grandma, we hope that somebody is enduring to our grandkids or spending time with them, but for some reason they are in this posture where they expect now this respect and this love when they have no connection or friendship or intimacy or deep relationship with the child. And so we hope for something, but man, it's heartbreaking when it doesn't happen. And we live in this world today where we get kind of disappointed often. But let me remind us, the humility for us, and now it's one thing to take care of the children that we've been placed over top of, to guard and govern and guide all these things. But for us, it matters that we allow our interior self to come to a position where we're not demanding anything from anybody. And if we get it, great. And we're going to love and we're going to give, just as we talked about last week, we're going to give out of ourselves. But even if I get nothing back, it's okay. Because I'm not entitled to anything. They don't owe me anything. And this is important for us to embody among people. It's important for us to embody among the body of Christ and in our relationship with God. Because sometimes people, after years of faithfulness, they get to a place where we feel like we deserve something from God. We've given him our sacrifice. We've worked hard. We've been over backwards. We get to a place where we feel like we deserve something. We're not quite there yet, Elin. Thank you. Sorry, follow along with the guide I gave you. You're doing a great job, kiddo. Hey, can we give just a bit of celebration, right? We have middle schoolers who work very hard every week, and we're grateful. So keep following the guide, but you're doing great, kiddo, all right? But it matters so much. It matters that we don't allow our souls to drift to a place of me. And that's where humility comes in and allows us to come to a place where we say, I don't need this. I'm not entitled, and I will continue to give selflessly, and I will serve, and I will take care of. But I'm not demanding. And I'm going to love selflessly, but I'm not demanding. This man had this attitude where he was so focused on saying, Lord, I'm not even worthy to come be with you. And he has now sent 2 different groups of people to come speak on his behalf. He's like, Jesus, I'm not even worthy to talk to you. I'm not even worthy to stand in front of you. And again, it's because in that culture, he was seen as this enemy, so he didn't want to be disrespectful in any way towards Jesus, even though he wouldn't have, not in the eyes of Christ. But you see, as his man embodies and embraces this kind of humility, not only is he expressing the sense of he's not entitled to anything, but it's important that we also see, because we'd expect this man too, because of the authority and governance that he has, we'd expect him to see this controlling behavior of Jesus, wanting to control Jesus. But he isn't. He isn't trying to control Jesus. He isn't trying to make him do anything for him. He is instead having this sense of saying, Jesus, you do whatever you want to do. You don't have to come into my home. You don't have to see me. Like, Jesus, you have your way completely. And you'd expect this man to be so controlling before Jesus, but he isn't. And I have to have us lean into this reality, because oftentimes when we are feeling pressured and we're feeling this kind of stress and anxiousness get on us, and people aren't doing what we want them to do, we kind of default into this mode where we try to grab a hold of people and make them do something. When we feel like the car of the family, we feel like things aren't quite going how we want, we then embrace this rather controlling spirit where we want to force people. We We say to our kids, and I don't say we as in we, but we as in people, we say if our kids aren't, acting right, well, like, you better knock it off. We tell them, we don't act this way. What are you doing, you bunch of wild animals, right? We're things are chaotic in the car, but all of a sudden we pull up to grandma's house and we walk in and we're like, all right, everything's kosher. Like, we're all right, right? And maybe they even happened this morning as you're coming to church, but we default in this place of trying to manage. And man, it creates a lot of friction, doesn't it? Especially when we've reached a day in our life and a day in the season of our family where now the kids aren't teenagers and they're not in the home. They're now adults in the world. And now we're trying to learn, how do we parent and lead these independent people? We look at them and we see them still as maybe in diapers. We still see them riding their bike for the first time. And I still look at my kids even, and they're 6, 3, and 10 months, and oh my goodness, I can't believe how time is flying. But man, understand that when our souls are saturated with humility, there is no room for an attitude of controlling others. Because we now shift into this place where we're not trying to create our own preference. We now have actually come into a higher place where now we're trying to see greater principles and values be present in the life of our family. And so even if it doesn't mean that we gather at our house, or it doesn't mean that we do this certain thing, or it doesn't look this certain kind of way, it means that there's still connection. It still means that we're family. It still means that we're united. We're together. And so we have to learn to let go of things as things change, as kids grow, and family members leave and they move and things happen. We've got to come to this place where we're okay with things looking a little bit different this year than last year. We're okay if maybe the way that I want it to be done, because we've always done it this way, it's not how we do it. And that's a new sense of humility. It's actually a new sense of equipping. Because it's even for those who are later in life, it's this new kind of passing the mantle. It's this passing of the torch down, this new kind of encouraging on for the kids who will now be the next generation of our family. Because there'll be a day where we are gone, and now it is up to our kids and grandkids and great-grandkids to keep the family intact. But we've got to be okay. And even as this place as children where we want Christmas and we want this new thing to happen, but yet we're still in this place where we're not trying to control mom, we're not trying to control dad. We now instead hand ourselves over to tradition. And we hand ourselves over into what now the family is doing. And see, that's another part of this thing, because I want us to see this man in this story. You see, we'd expect him to be so self-reliant. We'd expect him to be so self-reliant. But instead, we see this man submit to Jesus. And this is so important for us to see. Because I already said this earlier, I'm going to say it again. This man had access to everything. He had access to everything and anything he wanted at the drop of the hat. He could order anything. He could tell somebody to do something, they would do it. He even says that, I'm a man of great authority, and I could tell these people, go do this, and they'll listen to me, right? I'm a man of great affluence. But I know that I need you. I know that I need you, that you are the only one right now. And we'd expect this man to be self-reliant. We'd expect him to lean back into his own ability to handle the situation. But instead, he submits to Jesus. And I have to lead us down this road to understand that when our souls are saturated with humility, we are not defiant. We are not self-reliant people. Keep going down a few more spots. We're a few slides ahead. We are not self-reliant. We are not defiant people. when our souls are saturated with humility, we aren't seeking for me. We aren't seeking to branch out and to make our voice known. We instead embrace this spirit of submission. It's where now we embrace this attitude where we actually seek to submit to the generations that are over us, that God has placed over us. It's this new sense of submission where now, even we're out on our own in the world, now we still love and respect mom and dad and grandpa and grandma, but it may be in a new way, but we still embrace this spirit of submission. That still we seek to submit to each other. And we still, as people, seek to not branch out into our own, to cause division. Because, man, sometimes people love to voice their thing in the family group chat, or they love to stand out and sit in the corner and be silent and quiet because they didn't get to have their way. They love to make it known that they're not happy. But, man, Jesus invites us, when we are saturated with humility, we aren't seeking division. We aren't seeking defiance, but we submit. We submit to the people that God has put over us. We submit to His way and to His truth. It's vital we see this, because this is probably one of the most important parts of this entire story, where this man had everything, but instead he chose to submit. You see, we have to understand this important reality that only a heart that fully belongs to God is one that can be fully humble and at peace. Is not only is humility lived out in our family, not only can we aim to embrace it, because we can be good people in the world without Jesus. We can be nice, we can be kind, we can be generous. But much like the story that Jesus shared earlier, that a good tree can't produce bad fruit, and a bad tree can't produce good fruit, this story, this reality of even on the outside of our life, we can try to make things look well and fine. But sometimes the real us is deep down inside. We have to understand that it's only in our submission and surrender to Jesus that we can know this. It is only a heart that fully belongs to God. It's one that can be fully humble and be at peace. It's not rocket science. We spend much time in the world, we try to outsmart God, we try to put together our own rhythm, our own ways, we try to prove and earn ourselves to Him, don't we? It's like a child who seeks to show their father that they worth being loved. We as people, we try to show God that we're worth His sacrifice. We're worth His love. That we're worth His forgiveness. Understand that none of that is earned through checking off boxes and following a good religion and being nice people. Understand the work of what God was wanting to do on the inside of us begins, and we now have a soul that bends to Him, that we kneel to Him, and we continue down the rhythm of life of making sure the outside looks all good, but understand you can go a long time fooling a lot of people, but God makes it very clear that He doesn't look at what people look at. He looks at the heart. And so I implore you, I don't know what you're wanting God to do in your life. I don't know what you're hungry for. I don't know where you are. But I encourage you to embrace this very real truth. That is, when you fully surrender, you allow now this new posture of humility to begin to exist in your soul, and it makes it possible to then bring it into our relationships and into our life and into our family. We can try our best at manufacturing a man-made kind of humility in the world, and we can do a good job at it, but understand real, genuine, real peace, real humility is only in those who fully belong to God. And so I encourage you where you're at in your journey of faith and what you've believed about God and what you've believed about church, I encourage you to lean in a little more. Because what's going to happen in our time together after church, we're going to see 6 people who say, God, we're putting you first. Doesn't mean we know everything. It doesn't mean we have life all figured out. But it means that, Lord, I now belong to you and you alone. And you see, we're going to see 6 people take that step of faith, and there's going to be a moment where listen, maybe you didn't come and plan to be baptized today, but I'm gonna at the end of our time, I'm gonna say, does anyone else feel this moment of wanting to let people know that they're putting him first? And I'm gonna open up to the church and to anybody to say, if you'd like to be baptized, you can come forward now. And you probably didn't bring a dry pair of clothes and you didn't bring a towel like the other people, but that's okay. Because sometimes God begins to work and he begins to move, and we don't have control. We just let go. I don't know what he's doing in you, but let him have his way. And I tell you right now, it's the most beautiful thing in the world. Why don't we have this moment? We stand together and we pray, and then we sing this last song.